So, Dad, tell us the Glenn Williamson story.
Oh, the Glenn Williamson story, what a funny story that is. In fact, my mother wanted me to submit it to the Reader's Digest because she thought it was so funny. Okay, let me tell you the setup. First of all, we need to understand that this is way back before cell phones, back in the dark ages, and when we still had operators that we could call, and they would talk to us and help us out on various things. This is about 1964, probably 65, along in that area. And we lived in San Diego, Spring Valley to be precise, and I was plastering swimming pools for a living. And we had an office in San Diego that I was responsible for, and we had an office in Phoenix that I was responsible for. Whenever a crew needed extra hands, I was the extra hands to go out and be on the job. And I was scheduled to go with a crew to Escondido, which is about 30 miles north of San Diego, to work with a crew that day. It was a large swimming pool, and so an extra set of hands would be good. Well, the crews get up and go to work really early, like around 5 o'clock, beat the heat of the day, and they met at the yard or the warehouse where we stored our cement and sand and everything. And I was just going to meet them on the job, drive independently of them. And as I was getting up that morning, I received a phone call from our foreman in Phoenix saying that one man out of the three-man crew was ill that day and was unable to work. You just cannot do a normal-sized plaster job on a normal-sized swimming pool with two guys. You need at least three people. So I said to him, his name was Jay, I said, Jay, I will notify the crew here that I will not be on the job, and I will catch the first airplane out of San Diego, come over to Phoenix, give me the address, and I will meet you on the job. Sounded good, because I could be to Phoenix in less than an hour from the airport. So I hurried up and went down to the yard to tell Bartis and the rest of the crew that I wouldn't be with them, and by the time I got there to meet them, they had already left to go to the job. So I went back home thinking, well, what I can do is I will call the homeowner and tell them not to expect me, to tell the crew that I will not be there. It was important that they know that, because with them planning on me being there, there was a mechanism, a chemical that we could put in the plaster to make it set up faster. And if it's going to set up faster, they're going to want to have an extra set of hands there to help get the job done. So I got home and decided, okay, I know Mr. Glenn Williamson's telephone number because I have all the paperwork with me. I'll sit down here on the bed next to your mother, and I will phone Mr. Williamson and tell him to tell the crew when they get there not to expect Dennis. He's been called out of town. Now remember, this is around 5 o'clock in the morning. So I sat down and I dialed the number very carefully. And it rang and rang and rang and rang. And finally someone picked the telephone up and dropped it right back down in the cradle. Well, okay, I now have him awake. He'll probably answer the phone if I call again. So I dialed again. It rang, just barely started to ring, and someone picked it up and said, hello. I said, hello, Mr. Williamson? No, this is not Mr. Williamson. Click. Hangs up. So I double-checked the number that I was dialing, and I was dialing the correct number, or at least the number that was given to us by the swimming pool company. So I dialed again. Phone just didn't no more than start to ring, and the phone was picked up. Hello. I'm trying to meet you, Mr. Glenn Williamson. You let that blank Mr. Williamson get his own telephone. Click. All right. Section 2, just to kind of recap here, we got Mr. Williamson, well, he needs to get his own telephone, is what the guy said. And so I knew then that I was probably pushing it a bit. But I had to get the message to the crew in Escondido, because it was important that they know. So I was sitting there for a few minutes, and he said, well, I'll call the operator. I called the operator in San Diego. and explained the circumstance to her and said it's important this message be gotten to that crew of men. She said, well, I'll dial it and then you can talk to him. So she dialed the telephone. The same guy picked up the phone immediately and she said, sir, we're trying to locate Mr. Williamson. This is the operator. And he said some very unkind words to her and hung up. And she said to me, I am so sorry that the problem I thought might be between your home phone and this interchange, but it isn't. It's somewhere between San Diego and Escondido in the lines. So I will call the Escondido operator while we're on the phone and let her get through to the right Mr. Williamson. So she called the Escondido operator, explained the circumstance. The Escondido operator confirmed it all with me. Is there anything more I need to know? And I said no, and she said, let me call him right now. So she dialed the number. And this poor fellow, you could tell that his whole night had been ruined for the next week probably. And she said, sir, there's a problem with the telephone lines. You tell me there's a problem with the telephone lines. When that office opens, I will be in that office this morning, and I will tell them what the problem is with this telephone line. And hung up. So both operators just apologized profusely to me, saying, we are so sorry, there's not a thing that we can do. Absolutely not a thing. We hope your day goes better. I said, thank you very much for your kindness. So as I was sitting there trying to figure out what to do and how I could get a message to those guys, the solution came into my mind, and I said to my wife, Connie, I think I know what to do. So I dialed the telephone number again, and the man picked up the phone, hello, and I said, hello, this is Glenn Williamson. Has there been any phone calls for me this morning? And he said, hell yes, they've been ringing you all morning. And I couldn't stop laughing the entire day. I flew to Phoenix, laughing all the way over. When I got there on the job, Jay, the foreman, wanted to know what I was so happy about. And so I had to tell him the story. I came home still laughing. When I got home that night back in San Diego from Phoenix, I was still laughing. And Connie couldn't stop me from laughing. There is the Glenn Williamson story, and I was asked every year thereafter when we would have our annual Foreman's Recognition Day, someone would say, Dennis, tell us a Glenn Williamson story. And there it is.